Hey everybody, good morning. This is Harriet Kamek with Down to Earth. Had a little bit of a technical snag there, but you know how that works. Just trying to reconnect and to see. I suspect this has a lot to do with there might be too many people on the network. There just might be. There's so much going on with all the stuff in the political forum and the political arenas and all the arenas. There's just too much going on. This morning, as I was scrolling through my Twitter feed, I saw a funny video that just made me laugh. And I really don't know what these folks were protesting. I mean, it seems to me now that everybody just joins a protest. And these folks joined hands across apparently a busy roadway, and they were just singing some song, and they had a banner. We couldn't see what the banner was. And this guy in his scrubs, maybe he was a nurse, just got off a shift, you know how that is, perhaps had to work a double overnight, save people's lives. And he just walked right through the protest, grabbed the banner, dumped it, then came back and snatched the person's phone, one of the protesters' phones, and kicked it down the street. And all over my Twitter feed, people were just saying, "Hail to the chief." I mean, people were just like, okay, somebody finally said something or is doing something. And I thought about that for a minute, and I asked the question, uh, how did that happen? And I'm beginning to think that what happens is people are getting just a little bit tired. I think we're all on information overload is the best way to describe it. I think everybody's tired of the BS, and I kid you not, and just tired of all the stuff that is going on out there in the stratosphere. If it's not one thing, it's another. People are just tired, and we're sort of on information overload. So as soon as you start concentrating on one thing, here comes something else. And then everybody is competing for attention. Everybody is competing for their chance in the spotlight. Everybody wants the spotlight turned on them. And well, what is your validation? It's sort of like we're saying, well, what are you doing? Because now that everybody claims to be doing something, we really are just looking at what exactly are you doing? Are you really doing something, or are you just creating awareness? The other day, I went somewhere for lunch, I think, and I met a woman, and she says we knew each other. I don't remember, but she says we knew each other and that we had connected before. And she says, I remember you because you were part of a human trafficking forum a couple months ago or so on. So I know you very well. And I said, okay, but you know how these things are. And so I said, well, what are you doing? And she said, well, she separated from a group to form her own entity. And I said, okay, so I'm listening. So I said, well, what exactly are you doing? She said, well, I am creating awareness. So I said, is there a specific area that you're focused on? Is there a specific population or demographic within the human trafficking sector that you're focused on? And she said, no, I'm just creating awareness on human trafficking. So I smiled and I said, well, good luck to you. I hope it all works out for you. But as I walked away, I was like, I don't know. I think she needs to have some focus, right? And he thinks she needs to be specific, or maybe she just couldn't enunciate exactly what she's doing. Which brings me to what I really want to talk with you about this morning is how focused are you on what you're doing? If you have a plan to do something, and if you are not focused on it, if you don't have a specific program in mind, you might want to re-examine that, because what I have found is that everybody says, well, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and 100 people are doing the same thing, but how many people are really getting the job done? Most people just seem to talk and talk and talk and talk, uh, right? And just seem to just get up and just do stuff, and don't seem to focus. And you have to really, really be focused in and be specific about what you're doing. I found over the years that I had to stay true to what I was called to do. And what I felt that my calling was and my individual pathway was to talk about violence and how violence hurts and impacts women and children. And as I began to do that, I began to explore and realize that human trafficking is a form of violence against women and children, and how the traumas associated with violence and with human trafficking leave irreparable damage sometimes on the individuals affected. So I had written my book Through the Fire, and the stories in it describe trafficking, describe how I was trafficked, unknown to me. I didn't self identify until a few years ago. And that's not unusual within human trafficking. So, do you see what I'm saying? But I say all of that to say I stayed to the core. In other words, I found over the years that if you stick to your core, you're way better off. It may take longer, but if you are stuck and stay to your core, you'll be fine. You can't. This morning I was watching CBS News, and for most of us, especially for those of us who are people of color, and for those of us who perhaps are not don't have a cousin or auntie or uncle who is a major broadcaster or something. It takes a while to get started. I was watching CBS, and this woman named Gretchen Rubin has a podcast, and she's been featured on CBS News before. And she was on CBS again this morning, and she was talking about her podcast about whatever she talks about. And I was sitting there looking at her, and I'm like, now they make it seem like that's how easy it is to be successful, but it's not. She actually was introduced to them by someone whom she knows who brought her into the national spotlight. Do you see what I'm saying? So, is that success? I don't know. I think success is defined by you having to push against all the factors that say you couldn't make it. Now, I'm not saying that the first thing she's going to tell you is that she's a woman, so she couldn't have done it. But you're a white woman and you had more than a leg up on the ladder. So that was easier for you to get started. So is she successful? Define success. What does success mean to you? And you have to think about that when you're trying to strive towards your goal. It's sort of like you have to redefine success. Most people will tell you it's relatives, right? So some people who don't have money will tell you that success is defined as having a lot of money. But you have to look at who is providing that definition. You know why? Why?